Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Gallowgateshots FPL Show. My name's Matt and this is Dan.
Hello,
Say hello to
everyone.
everyone, Dan.
Hello.
So how has we've had a week since the game launched. We obviously did a show last week all around Newcastle United, player prices. Go and check that out if you haven't seen it, because that was an absolute beast of an episode. Um, how has your tinkering been since last week? Have you made many more drafts or have you just kept with the same one?
I've made one tinker where I've made like 6 changes to it. Job done. I've not looked at it since sometime in the middle of the week, just as I've tried to absorb new information, largely so that I don't forget about what I want. I'll probably make another one next week where I do things like take Odegaard out and some stuff like that. But it's more so it's just trying to get myself in a place where I remind myself exactly what I want to do more than, right, this player's got to be my team. This player's got to be my team. Oh, no, there's too many players in my team. Well, I can't afford this player. I can't afford that player. It's just, I remember someone made a really good point about X. I'll stick him in so I don't forget. That's sort of how my drafts go. I need preseason before I make any concrete decisions on anyone.
Yeah, did you know what? I agree. I'm looking forward to pre-season. Tell you what, like I'm going to really give away how much of a bloody FPL nerd I am. So I've got a folder in me, like in my photos folder on my phone. So when I do like a little bit of a tinker around and change things to like a fairly high amount. So if I change like 3 players, for example, I'll take a screenshot of it and I'll put it into into an FPL drafts folder so that when the time comes, like say a month or so into messing around with my team, I'll have a look at what my very first draft was, because you know what over managing is.
Yeah.
So like thinking you're actually making really good when actually you just because the opportunity to change is there.
Yeah.
You think you're actually doing good when actually you just there's a reason why you picked the first team in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think it's handy to have screenshots saved into your phone so that when maybe a week before the game, like the week before the first game of the season, you can have a little bit of a look through and think, actually, is the team that I've got now better than the ones that I had when the game first launched? I always find that quite interesting. But obviously, pre-season is a massive, massive game changer. I remember when Lundstrom came about a few years ago, I was like, he could be class because I noticed that he was playing every game for Sheffield United the season that they came up. And I was like, pre-season came around and he was starting every game, 4 million, playing. I'm sure, was he in midfield?
Midfield, yeah.
And I was like, right, he's in my team immediately and had him from game week 1 right until the end. And it was an absolute beast. So, yeah, pre-season, save drafts into your phone, a few little nerdy tips for you. This week, we are going to be looking at goalkeepers and defenders. So we wanted to bunch them both together because we didn't want to do one episode solely around goalkeepers because it's a bit of a lottery, isn't it, Daniel? Isn't it?
Yeah, especially when we've got no idea who's going to be playing where. There seems to be some sort of carousel about to happen where a Nana might come into Man United. Don't know his price yet, likely 5 million. Then if he goes, what happens to Henderson and or Heaton? Does Henderson go to Nottingham Forest? Does Heaton at 4 million go to Luton? That's been touted. That's been in the works for a little while, apparently. So it's going to be interesting. So yeah, there's plenty of decisions in real life to be made, let alone what we can do with our fantasy teams. So I don't think it's going to require too much energy at the minute to really settle in on which specific goalkeeper you want. For me, it's about identifying what sort of price points you want to work within. I always feel like you never want to spend more than 9.5 million on your goalkeepers. That's the absolute max. Whether that be a 5.5 million and a 4, just dead. Don't really like the 5.5 million keepers. We can talk about that if you like in a bit. You've got your 5 and your 4.5. You've got your 5 and your 4. And then you've got your 4.5 and your 4. I can't see too many double 4.0 goalkeeper rotations going on. I think last year we had the Leicester City. If you were crazy enough to do that with how bad they were defensively, you could have had Ward and Everson for like 7.8 million at one point. And Ward had, I think, about 6 games where he was actually a Premier League standard goalkeeper. But other than that, for me, it's just about getting in that structure. So I've got placeholders in at 5 million and at 4.5 million. No, sorry, 5 million and 4 million. Because I'm not going to rotate the keepers. So that I'm aware of how much I've got to spend throughout the rest of my team. That's what I've done. The goalkeeper I've currently got in is Raya, but he might be off as well. And Brentford have just signed a new goalkeeper.
They have indeed, yeah. So normally, in the past, I've tried 2 4.5 million goalkeepers and looked at rotating, which is an absolute nightmare because I would say more often than not, you end up with one goalkeeper that actually gets the clean sheet being on your bench, and the keeper that you start concedes 3 and gets a yellow card. So it's always, I always try and play it nowadays with 4.5 because there's actually always fairly good options, and there's always one team that has a keeper at 4.5 that does fairly well during the season, because it's quite often an average team overperforms in a season. You've just got to try and pick the right one, and then having the 4 million goalkeeper on the bench. This year I'm looking at Flecken. So you mentioned Raya being off to, I think it's Spurs potentially, because Lloris is going as well, I think, isn't he, from Spurs?
Yes, he's not been included in like their friendly squads and all sorts. So
yeah,
that's going to be interesting.
So it's interesting with Flecken because I was having a little look, and Brentford have either done some incredible scouting using FBref, which is like an analytics website, or they've just gotten incredibly lucky and punted on the goalkeeper that got the most clean sheets in the Bundesliga last year. So Flecken got the Golden Glove, like I said. His passing is outrageous, just like Rhea was last year. So Rhea was 3rd highest for volume of passes out of Europe's top 5 leagues last year. Flecken was 7th. So both have got high volume of passes. They're used to playing in teams which like to pass out from the back. Obviously, that means that we get a lot of BPS, just like Raya did last season. He was the top keeper for bonus last year. He got 20. That was mostly down to saves and passing ability. So if you look at Flecken coming in as a direct kind of replacement with the same style of play, you can kind of just look and say, well, that's where the points are going to be again this year. With Flecken as well, on FBref, there's a little, if you click on a player's profile and you scroll down, you can see like player comparisons. So it tells you which players are similar. If you click on Flecken's profile and you scroll down, the number 1 player who is similar to Flecken is, guess who the player is, Dan?
Raya?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So Brentford have done a really good job with their scouting, essentially, because they're very, very similar sort of players. So for that reason, and because Raya did so well last year, I'm kind of just going to take the punt on that is going to be the 4.5 million of choice this year. There's a certain keeper as well who's proven quite popular at 4.5, which for a Newcastle United podcast might not be best to mention too much. But Tiny Hands himself is 16.7% owned.
What a terrible, terrible pick. Please don't have him in your team. A, because he's a Mackham, and B, because he's actually a terrible, terrible pick. Out of all the goalkeepers in that price range, I think he's comfortabably the worst. That will actually start games.
Yep,
100%. In terms of his statistics last year, they were shocking. I don't even think he's a bad goalkeeper or anything. I think he's a good goalkeeper, but he just plays in a terrible team that concedes such a high XGI. Too many letters. There's too many letters getting involved now. They concede a lot of good chances, is what I'm trying to say. That's not what you want from a goalkeeper. He doesn't make that many saves volume wise. He just seems to pull off the odd worldie.
Yeah.
So I'd be staying away from Pickford. I think you're right in terms of the 4.5 could be the best option. I think on wildcard, once we've got a clear idea of what's going on, West Ham's goalkeepers, Fabianski's 4.5 and Areola's 4. So you could have the double up on them, because I can't imagine outside of Jared Bowen, you're going to want any West Ham players. And they do actually have some good fixtures coming up sort of a little bit later on in the season. Let me just get up their fixture ticker. So basically, from game week 7, they've got Sheffield United at home, then us at home, then Villa away, which isn't great. But then they've got Everton, Brentford, Forest, Burnley, Palace, a potential Harry Kane-less Spurs, Fulham, Wolves. So that's like a really nice run to have a West Ham defender, and why not the goalkeeper if you're struggling elsewhere and we're still a bit unsure. But that might be a little bit of a wait and see. If Tom Heaton goes to Luton, I think that would be a great 4 million pick for your backup on the bench, because you would have a starting 4 million goalkeeper that you're probably not going to want to play. But just in case your starting goalkeeper picks up an injury in the warm-up or gets randomly dropped or something, Heaton might get a 1 point or saves. Heaton's a really good shot stopper. I can't imagine they're going to keep many clean sheets, so he's not worth it being your starting goalkeeper by any stretch. But I think as far as a 4 million goalkeeper goes, he could be pretty ideal.
Yeah, and I think Heaton, if Luton are to pull off a clean sheet, they're the sort of team you can imagine that whichever keeper's in goal is going to get max bonus, loads of saves. It's probably a decent punt, I think, in fairness. Just a quick one on, because there's 2 goalkeepers I think we should probably mention. So with Ramsdale currently sitting as the highest owned goalkeeper in the game, 5 million. I don't like it. I think he takes up an Arsenal place, which is, you probably want somebody from Arsenal's defence, but not the goalkeeper.
We will talk about it, I'm sure.
Maybe we will. Maybe we will. Who knows? Who knows at this point?
Spoiler on this Defenders episode. We might talk about Arsenal defenders.
Yeah. Or not, but we'll see. Who knows? Keep watching to find out.
If you're lucky, find out.
Yeah, so, and obviously we can talk about Nick Pope, but we talked about him in the last episode. Again, if you haven't watched it, watch it, because it was good. We talk about Nick Pope and other players too from Newcastle United. The last player that I want to talk about is Edison. Now, he was so popular at the back end of last year. All of the sort of analytic crowd and FPL review, all of those kind of tools that we use to help players pick their teams were suggesting Edison.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is Man City's stats are amazing. But what the statistics don't factor in is 5 minutes from the end of the game, Man City just decide not to give a fuck anymore, essentially, and just letting in a cheap goal. And Edison isn't a very good shot stopper.
It's not.
So just don't buy him. 5.5 million, you don't need him, because if you can get a clean sheet and he gets subbed magically after about 85 minutes, you might get a clean sheet. But the chances are he's not coming off, and Man City will concede a goal that means absolutely nothing at all in the grand scheme of things. All it means is you're just going to get 2 points off him. So yeah, don't buy Edison. Don't do it. Don't do it to yourself.
Do it.
On that note, anything else to say on goalkeepers?
Nah, I'm all good.
No. I mean, one last very quick thing from me is Brighton goalkeepers.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a rotation, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're both 4.5, I think.
Yeah.
No chance. Do you want a Brighton goalkeeper, especially when we'll talk about defenders, but there's a defender that you're probably going to want from Brighton.
Yeah, very popular defender from Brighton. We're going to talk about. So, and I don't think you're going to want to double up on Brighton defense. So yeah, that's a beautiful little segue into defenders, Daniel.
Yes.
So, I think we should start with the most obvious and most priciest defender in the game. I think we need to keep it as short as possible, because we could spend an entire episode on whether we should just have Trent Alexander-Arnold in the team or not. He's likely to start in centre midfield again. That tactic was working for them. Is it worth 8 million? What do you reckon?
I don't feel comfortable offering anyone any advice on this whatsoever.
You're not sitting on the fence. Get off the fence.
This is an outrageous sitting on the fence. He's not in my drafts, and the reason why he's not been in my drafts is because of how expensive he is. And when there are just so many midfielders that are cheaper than him, I'd kind of just rather go there. At the beginning of the season, I just want to be chill. I want to go with the really popular picks. I want to go with the template as much as I can, because this is what we did last year. We didn't go with the template. We got left behind and we had to play a catch up. Whereas I don't want to do that. I'm happy not being, top 1K, 5K, 10K, whatever, but I need to be with the pack. Whereas last year we weren't with the pack really, Matt. So until the bitter end when we caught up.
One of us caught up. One of us caught up.
Trying to be kind. People have short memories, Matthew. You're fine. So yeah, I just personally, he's a lot of money that I can spend elsewhere. And especially when I've got no idea what Liverpool's turning up. I've got no idea how they're going to line up. Obviously, they've bought Szoboszlai, McAllister, but Fabinho, Henderson might both be going. Thiago might be going. It feels like a lot of changes at once. It feels like there's going to be a lot of rotation up front for them. How are they going to settle in? It's one that pre-season could change my mind. 100% pre-season could change my mind. And Liverpool were really good at the back end of last year. And I think they could start strong again this year as well. But it's just the money. Like 8 million is so much money for a question mark. You pay 8 million in defence for an absolute knock and bet. You want it to be guaranteed. And Liverpool's defence don't guarantee me that. So, and I don't know. I've got no idea. FPL wise, how good Trent will be in that position. Like, is he going to get the points, or is he better off having a bit more space on the right wing back area? I know he's just a full back, but where he plays, he may as well be a right wing back. Does he get more joy there than he does in centre mid? Is it going to be too congested? And just in terms of FPL points, not in terms of how he can play as a footballer. I think the back end of last year and for England as well, he showed that. It's certainly against weaker opposition he can do it. I'm not too sure how good he's going to be against world-class central midfielders, but it's just too much to wait and see. How do you feel about it, Matt?
I think when Liverpool do well, Trent does well. I think that's the bottom line of it, and I think it showed with the statistics of the back end of the season. So I'd say for the first 2/3 of the season, Liverpool was shocking, and Trent was awful as well. But then Liverpool got amazing in that back end of the season and gave us a run for our money. And I mean, I've written it down here. So the final 10 games, I don't have Trent in my draft either. So I was in your boat as well. I did this little bit of research and now I wish he's in my team. I really want him because final 10 games, 1 goal, 7 assists.
Okay. How many clean sheets did Liverpool keep?
This is it though, 3. 3 clean sheets in 10. So and that as it stands, that back 4 is remaining the same. If anything, the midfield is less shored up as what it was last season because they're losing 2 players. Don't have James Milner, losing Fabinho. For me, Trent will get some attacking returns, but that will be almost compensating for the lack of clean sheets. He's going to get 6 points, but it'll be because he's got 2 appearance points and a I don't know, an assist or something in a bonus. It's not.
If an assist and 1 goal conceded isn't enough for 8 million. They need to keep clean sheets, which is what I'm curious about. And if they do start keeping clean sheets, then I'm in trouble. One thing I will say, just in defence of starting with Trent, is that it's easier to come down from 8 million than it is to go up to 8 million. If you want Trent in and you don't have him at the start and you've not kept money in the bank or you don't have an easy way to him, you're in trouble. But I always think as well, what are the chances of all 5 of my 4 midfielders and all 3 of my forwards, or even 2 of them that I'm actually going to play, what are the chances of all 7 of them going off? So one of them can move directly to a Trent, probably it'll be 2 moves. But early in the season, I'm not asked about hits. It's fine to take hits early doors if you're going to be aggressive. And if all them do go off and Trent does hurt you still, Well, they're just evening each other out anyway, so you've not really lost. There's never been a more play the game your own way moment than with the Liverpool assets this year. Between, obviously, we'll talk about the forwards and midfielders in other episodes, but obviously they're coming under the magnifying glass as well.
Yeah, I think at the moment, I mean, obviously I've mentioned those statistics, which is making us question things a bit. But the way I've looked at it at the minute is I would rather have drop that 8 million Trent to a 5 million defender where I think there's value, and then upgrade my 4.5 million forward to a 7.5 million forward and play 3-4-3.
4 midfielders, not even 5. I'm going to be excited to see which midfielder you're not having in your team.
No, but I've still the way that my team's set up at the minute, I've got a 4.5 million defender on the bench, and I've got a £7 million midfielder on the bench to rotate, because obviously we're going to go into midfielders later on in the next episode. But those Brighton players, their first 3 fixtures are amazing, but then they go quite awful quite quickly, and then it kind of coincides with another team's fixtures getting quite rosy. So it means that by having that 7 million goalkeeper, that 7 million mid on the bench, I can drop down one of my. I mean, spoiler alert, I've got 2 Brighton midfielders in my team. So do you know what I mean? It just gives us, without having Trent in that team, I've got more funds,
more flexibility everywhere.
More flexibility in the attacking slots, which actually I think you need more flexibility there rather than in defence, because last year in particular, clean sheets were quite sporadic. Attacking returns were quite hard to predict for certain players. Whereas in the midfield and forwards, it's much easier to predict which players are good and are going to score the points. So in terms of Trent, I think it's a wait and see for now, for pre-season. Have you got any interest in 6.5 and 6 million defenders? So we've got like Trips, Robbo, Virgil van Dijk or Cancelo, which all seem absolutely pointless. No?
Yeah, absolute.
So
yeah, dreadful group.
Chuck that conversation away then.
Yeah.
5.5 million is interesting. Is there anybody who's standing out for you?
Yeah, so for me, there's 2 defenders that are standing out to me, and that's John Stones and Ruben Diaz. So heavily reported Kyle Walker's off to Bayern Munich, personal terms agreed. I don't know what the fee is going to be or anything like that. So that's one less sort of competition for John Stones in that position. Ruben Diaz is pretty much nailed as that centre back anyway. And when I look at Man City's start of the season, Burnley away first game, then us, I think we'll score against them, fair enough. But then Sheffield United away, Fulham at home, West Ham away, Forest at home, Wolves away. Up until then and then it comes to a bit tricky Arsenal, Man United and Brighton, 3 games in a row. So for the first 7 games, I absolutely have to have a Man City defender in there. I'm definitely not going with Edison, Mr. 6-point maximum. And that's the thing, John Stones might actually get subbed off early, 75 minutes or so, bank a clean sheet before they concede later on. I do think Ruben Diaz is a more solid pick in terms of minutes, but John Stones is a bit more of a goal threat, A, from set pieces, but B, from actually playing in central midfield, which is where he's going to do the same thing as Trent's going to do. Obviously, not to the same proficient level in terms of free kick taking or long shots or anything like that, but arguably better in terms of ball filtering and progressing through the lines and things like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see him play. And the game's meant to be fun. And I think watching John Stones move into central midfield is just a really fun thing. And with those fixtures, they back it up. And Man City had the joint best defence in the league or something last year when I was looking. So, yeah, I think as a 5.5 million, that's where I want to go. I want to go to John Stones or Ruben Diaz, and I'll just see how I feel the day before.
Fair dues. I don't have any 5.5 million defenders in my team at the moment. Don't see much much value in any of them. I mean, I've seen quite a few people going for Reece James and Ben Chilwell, which I just think
already injured, isn't he, Reece James?
Is absolutely like lunacy. I just think Reece James, 16 games last year, 1 goal, 1 assist, got 4 yellow cards. So he's getting a yellow card every in 25% of his games, which means he's losing points and losing the chance to get into the bonus. It's just all like, and Chilwell again. Like I understand with Pochettino coming in, the way that he had his fullbacks bombing on. He had Kyle Walker, didn't he? And who else did he have in Pochettino?
Danny Rose for a bit.
Danny Rose for a bit.
He had Trippier and Ben Davies. I think they were the predominant four fullbacks.
And in fairness to him, he made a name for them. In fairness, he kind of turned those players into very good, well-known fullbacks. But so Reece James, I think, is made of like the Pringles at the bottom of a Pringles tube. So like not the regular ones at the top, like the really sturdy ones. The ones that are like when you've had a picnic and you've eaten them all, right?
No, I can't do that.
And
been... Sorry, that's what you do at the end of the call.
Yeah,
definitely.
I don't know what you do at picnics like, but so
I am so sorry to everyone watching.
So Reece James, the Pringles at the bottom, right? The ones at the bottom that are getting shook around. That is Reece James. He's broken, and Ben Chilwell's not much better. Let's move swiftly on from that.
Yes.
So, yeah, and I think 5.5. I tell a lie. I said before that I don't have any 5.5 million defenders. I've got Luke Shaw, and he seems really popular. He's 34.9% owned.
Very popular.
So, but then I think obviously Man United's defense was really good towards the back end of the season. De Gea got the Golden Glove, didn't he? And Luke Shaw's always popular at this point, like FPL drafts, like notoriously so. Everyone seems to go automatically towards Luke Shaw without any like proper justification other than he's fairly attacking and Man United might be good this year.
Yeah, I mean, Man United are way better at defending at home than away, or certainly were last season. So it's always good to look at the home fixtures. I think 5.5 million is just a bit too expensive to rotate the left back. But they've got Wolves at home, Forest at home, Brighton at home, Palace at home, and then Brentford at home. That's up until game week 8. So quite a few sort of good fixtures in there, although Palace historically have actually done all right at Old Trafford, and like in recent times, certainly under Roy Hodgson they did. With their away games, or Spurs away, Arsenal away, Burnley away, fine. So I don't know. I just think that's a lot of money for okay fixtures.
Yeah,
he's someone that for me I think could just come in a little bit later in the season once we've actually seen how Man United are going to play, going to operate. If you wanted to sort of cover yourself in the Man United defenders, you could just go for a cheaper one. But Luke Shaw does tend to get in the bonus. That's the thing. So you would be. That's where that extra sort of 0.5 million is coming from. He's a bit of a bonus machine when he plays, but he played like left-sided centre-back at times last year. If they play a system where one of their wingers tucks into form midfield, like everyone seems to be doing nowadays, is Luke Shaw that player that comes into midfield, or is he going to be one that tucks into play as one of the centre-backs? Because he did both of those roles last year. So that could be a costly mistake. But again, going on template, he's right there. He must be the most highly owned 5.5.
Yeah, 100%. We do need preseason. We just it's a wait and see for all of these. It's a wait and see. Moving on to 5 million.
Yeah,
there's quite a few interesting options. Is there? Do you want to give me a couple that you're looking at and are interested in?
I'll give you two. For me, the two stand out. Estupiñán, who is currently 51.6% owned. If he does anything, you are absolutely shafted. Opening fixtures against Luton at home, Wolves away, West Ham at home. You couldn't dream of any better. Newcastle at home. We don't usually like travelling away to Brighton. Man United away, but then Bournemouth at home, Villa away. It does get a little bit trickier. Game week 8, you've got Liverpool at home, Man City away, which isn't nice. But then after that, see your Greens, Fulham, Everton, Sheffield United, Nottingham Forest. So it depends on obviously when you're going to be thinking about using your wild card. But for those first 3 games, Luton, Wolves, West Ham, 2 of them at home, absolutely no-brainer to have him in your team with how attacking he is as well. And the other one is Gabriel at Arsenal, who I think is the best Arsenal defender. You probably heard that if you watch any of that content. But he is a danger from set pieces for Arsenal. I do think Zinchenko's at risk of rotation with Tierney, depending on how the game's going, because Zinchenko let Arteta down in the big moments last year. Similar to what he did with Pep in the big moments, like the Champions League final when they lost against Chelsea. I don't know if you can remember, but Havertz's goal, Zinchenko was really, really at fault for that. So I think there might be rotation there. Gabriel's the only left-sided centre-back they've got, as far as I'm aware, as they've obviously brought in Nuri and Timber to challenge Ben White, but Ben White can also play a right-sided centre-back. That's his natural position. But is he going to get in ahead of Saliba? How is Saliba doing? So there's lots of other moving parts everywhere. Tomiyasu's still there, I think. So I just think Gabriel's the most nailed-on choice at 5 million, and he carries a goal threat. And when we look at Arsenal's opening fixtures as well, these are just absolutely glorious. Nottingham Forest at home, Palace away, Fulham at home, Man United at home, but at least it's at home, Everton away, Spurs at home, Bournemouth away, before they get Man City in Chelsea 8 and 9. But again, for me, I'll be playing my wild card around then anyway. So, yeah, I think Gabriel at 5 million should be a shoo-in for most people's teams. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm looking at Gabriel as well. 96 games in the Premier League he's played, 10 goals, 77 shots. So loves a header, loves to try and at least score, which obviously anybody who's got any sort of idea about Fantasy Premier League is often a good thing. So yeah, I mean, on defenders who like to score, I had a little look to see who was the defender who had the most shots on goal last year. Any guesses?
The defender who had the most shots on goal last year?
Yeah.
Estupinian.
No. It was War Sexy Fabian Schär.
Was it?
By a country mile.
I know you had the highest XG. You had an XG of like 5 point something or other.
So Trent was second with 40 shots on goal. Fabian Schär was top with 56. Loves a shot. And do you know what I was thinking? Oh, they're just like shots from outside the area where they've like blazed over the bar, over the bar. 40 of those shots were headers. Does that not just show that he's a terrible header of the ball at goal? Is that not what that shows? That's what that says to me. I'll not have a bad word said about him.
Look, he's a sexy man. He's a fantastic centre-back. But he's not very good at heading the ball in the box. And that face always gets injured.
But do you know what, though? It makes a lot of sense now that you think about it. If he's having all of those headers on goal consecutively every single week, like Trippier's pinging that ball with his laces onto his bunts every single time.
He is
the guy's not going to be well. It's going to be like it's going to just be like, you know, like the standard kind of box when like a boxer gets to about 50 years old.
Yeah.
That's going to be Fabian by the end of this season. Especially now we've got Tonali involved with his like pinpoint accuracy.
I feel for him. Pray for Fabian.
He's done for.
This guy going to be like, no way is he more handsome than me. Absolutely just smashing him right in the face with it. Roberto Bernard style.
Right. So essentially you stole my 5 million picks. There are some other ones of note, like Ake, although there's a rotation risk there. Moreno from Villa, who could prove to be a fairly decent option. Pedro Porro, but we all saw what happened when
Not yet.
Spurs went to four at the back. Porro was hopeless. Saliba, you mentioned, Zinchenko, you mentioned. So it's a wait and see, but standout picks are Gabriella, Stupinan, and Cher. 4.5 million. We talked about Sven last week. He's the highest owned, 29.3. Almost, I feel like he's wrongly priced. You disagree. Is there any other options around 4.5?
Yeah, I think Matty Cash is a great shout at right back for Villa. I think Villa are a really good team. They're going to have Europa Conference, but they could honestly play the reserves or certainly half a team. You've got players like obviously Tyrone Mings that performed really well last year. I had Tyrone Mings for quite a bit towards the end. The ascent started with Tyrone Mings going him instead of in a single game week instead of Tarkowski when Villa played Tarkowski and Tarkowski had the double. That was the catalyst to it all. So thank you, Tyrone. But is he going to rotate with Pau Torres? That's just came in left-sided centre-back, knows Emery really well, Champions League experience. So that's just a nightmare. That's something that I really can't be bothered with. You've obviously got Moreno on the other side, who I do think is a better option than Cash if all else was equal. But for the money, I'd rather have the 0.5 million in Cash. Cash is a really good attacking right back playing for I know it's horrible to say about the Brummy Macans, but Villa are a good team now. So it's probably worth going for. He's also £4.5. You can bench him. First game against us, you want nothing to do with that. And you don't want anything to do with game week 4 against Liverpool away. But the first 5, other than those two, are Everton at home, Burnley away, and Palace at home. That's just, they're such good fixtures to have Aston Villa players. Then got Chelsea away and Brighton at home. Again, not great. Obviously, depends when you want to use your wild card. But look at this. After this, Wolves away, West Ham at home, Luton at home, Forest away, Fulham at home, Spurs away, Bournemouth away. That is gorgeous. So
screams wild card, that, doesn't it? That is, you want to be bringing in Watkins.
Game week 8 already looks like a good wild card option because some teams have got, obviously, someone's got to play Man City and Liverpool. But I'll give a Michael Owen commentary special there. But obviously, for a lot of the players that we'll have in those first 8 game weeks because of how good their fixtures are, got a couple of them that are going to run into a little bit of trouble around that time. So you could bring in the Villa player for them, but I think at 4.5 million, that's absolutely fine to bench a 4.5 million defender for the sake of 3 games, maybe. Because I'd still fancy them against Chelsea away. It depends on how well Chelsea do by game week 6. But yeah, Brighton, Liverpool, and Newcastle, I wouldn't be overly keen about playing them in those games. But the rest of them, yeah, I think Matty Cash is a great pick. And do they have another right back that's going to challenge him? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think so either. Can Konsa play there?
Maybe. He's definitely a centre back, isn't he? Konsa will be the right-sided centre back, who's probably safer than Mings at the minute. But they've got what's he called? The Brazilian centre back coming back.
Diego Carlos.
That's him, Diego Carlos. I can't remember his name there.
Yeah. Who's also 4.5 as well. I think once we get wind of what that back line is going to look like and how it's going to work, there's definitely value there. I think that's the bottom line.
I love how you're wearing a cap. You've got this lovely, lovely facial hair, and you keep on saying that's the bottom line because it makes us feel like I'm talking to Stone Cold Steve Austin right now.
Have I said that more than once?
Yeah, that's the second time you've said it because I thought it the first time you said it, and I want you to continue to say that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize I was doing it, but
so.
Yeah, the only reason I'm wearing a cap, by the way, since he's drawn attention to it, I've had this on all day, right? So now if I take it off, I'm gonna have probably the worst hat hair that anyone's ever seen. So I might as well just keep it on. It looks like I'm trying to protect my eyes from the glaring lights above us. But anyway, we'll move swiftly on. So
that's the bottom line.
That is the bottom line because I said so. So one more person I want to touch on, but it kind of scuppers my thinking behind having Flecken is Ethan Pinnock or Rico Henry. I think there's an option there. Pinnock, 3 goals last season. Got a fairly decent amount of goal threat. Rico Henry, decent assist threat. I think Pinnock I would favour because of you obviously get more points for goals, don't you? So just to touch on that, but I can't have Pinnock if I'm having Flecken because I don't want two Brentford defenders.
I agree. And Brentford have just bought a new centre back as well.
Yeah, Collins. Is it Nathan Collins as well?
From Wolves.
Yeah. And then finally, to round it all up, I mean, it's not really worth talking too much about it. You've got Baldock, who's 6.5% owned, Bell, who's the more favoured from Luton, at 21.2%, and then Bayer from Burnley, who's 8.2% owned. We don't know who's going to be the best one. Nobody does.
It's Baldock. It's going to be Baldock. It's going to be Baldock.
I've got Baldock, and I'm not going to lie. I've got Baldock. Just put
the right wing back, isn't he? So
yeah, just
back him over the two centre backs. Got a question for you though, Matt.
Oh, go for it. Do it.
And it's a question for anyone that wants to answer in the comments as well. Last year, there was a little bit of just like a little bit of circus around a player from Wolves called, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Hoover.
I know who you mean.
He's 4 million, and I was wondering, like, does anyone think he's going to get a game for Wolves this year? They've sold everyone else.
Oh yeah. I mean, nobody knows. I don't know. Who cares about Wolves defenders? I mean,
I think I'd back a Wolves defence over Luton, Sheffield United.
I don't know. You know, Wolves could be quite shocking this year. When you think about it,
at least they've got, like, I don't know. I back the manager to work borderline miracles.
Yeah,
with a defensive team, he loves a defensive team. Lopetegui.
Yeah, I mean, Luton were a very defensive team last year as well, though, weren't they?
Yeah, but
they had a very good defensive record last year. Hence why I think Bell's so popular. Baldock, though, I remember Baldock was very popular the first time they came up.
Yeah.
Hence why I've got him in this year. I just think tried and tested, right wing back. Give it a go. But like I say, nobody really knows, and they're just going to sit as the third sub anyway. Yeah. More often than not. So if it's pointless even debating whether they're going to get points or not and whether they're a good pick, because if they are a good pick, they're going to be sat third on your bench anyway. So you're never going to see the points. So it's pointless even.
It's a headache, isn't it?
It is. It's just a headache. You might as well I would rather actually have the worst pick out of the three in there. So then you're not worried about them getting points. Yeah. And on that note, on that expert bit of advice, we're going to call it there. We will have, or do have, a Gallowgateshots league set up. It's been kind of restarted from last year. So if you're already in, I think you should be in again this year. If not, the code should be appearing now somewhere. Scott's going to throw some magic onto the screen. You could even actually put some magic and do some like juicy animations somewhere as well while he's doing it. Or he's just going to put it up really boring and make me look like an absolute tool. Yeah, so if you're not in the league, join the league.
Scott, if you could superimpose a packet or a box or tub of Pringles to my previous actions, that'd be really, really gratefully received.
Or you could do something else with it instead, which would probably be even more greatly received. I don't. Right. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Before you go, if you disagree with anything we've said, because we've just kind of had a little discussion, pop it in the comments. Let us know what your thoughts are, which players from each price point you're going to be going for. Anyone that we've not mentioned, because we don't have the time to go into everything. Anybody we've not mentioned that you think we should have, pop it down here and we'll have a little discussion with you. Like the video, press the bell, do all that stuff, subscribe to it, become a member, all that rubbish. See you later. We're off. Goodbye. Good night. See you later.
Don't buy Pringles.